Hey YouTube, Chris with Seaburner FPV here. Gonna do a dual product review on a flight controller ESC combo and also an AKK VTX. The flight controller VTX combo is the Hobbywing X-Rotor Micro combo. This is a 45 amp 4-in-1 ESC capable of handling 6S. F4 chip in there, and this is the version 2 of this flight controller, so this one is capable of 32K in theory on the PID loop and the gyro update. Have yet to test that, even flash it, but later in the video I will get to all that stuff once I install it. If you want to take a quick look at everything, here's the box. We've got the ESCs down here, and then the flight controller over here. I'm not going to get into too much detail on what's in there, but as you can see, there's a couple cool functions. Obviously the all-in-one is going to make a nice clean build, but on the flight controller itself there's a dedicated 10-volt output which you can run to your VTX. And it's not actually 10 volt from the flight controller, it's a dedicated 10 volt from the ESC. It's just through the flight controller. A couple other things, it's integrated OSD, as mentioned before, F4, and there's also, like I said, there's going to be a bunch of the connectors are going to be in here, so you can make a nice clean build. Let's see. So it's got the XT60 connector in there, a couple capacitors, I think a 35 volt, 1000 microfarad, and then it's got all the different cables. So I'm gonna go ahead and install that in the same drone as I'm gonna install the VTX. And here's the VTX. This is a new one I saw. It's the Infinity DVR, the AKK Infinity DVR. This one is capable, or it says it's capable of going up to 1,000 milliwatts on the video transmission. There's smart audio, there's an integrated mic. As you can see, there's no connectors. The wires are soldered directly onto the VTX itself. It's a MMCX connector, which I prefer. I always feel like those are the best connections. And also what makes this pretty cool is that there is an onboard, see this micro SD slot? That's for an onboard DVR. It's gonna obviously record in analog, not HD, but for all the people out there that like to have their flight video, like analog goggle feed, or what would be your analog goggle feed, sync up to your HD feed. This should be a pretty good alternative, just because it should be a clean transmission, whereas when you're recording off your goggles you're going to get like the bad feedback and the lines and any of the dropouts or any stuff like that, whereas this should be a dedicated signal. So I'm going to go ahead and install this VTX and this flight controller onto a build I already have. As you can see, I've got everything connected and wired up. 4 stacks. The first stack is the all-in-one ESC. The second stack is the flight controller. The third stack is the run cam split, and then on top we've got the Infinity DVR VTX. I did want to mention a couple things I didn't get to earlier in the video about the flight controller specifically. You obviously can't see the flight controller because of the VTX, so I'm going to go ahead and bring out this diagram. This diagram came with the flight controller, obviously. But what I didn't mention is there's 3 UARTs on here, UART1, UART3, and UART6, dedicated S-Bus port. But what I found cool on this flight controller was, if you look right here on the right side, that little box there is essentially a connector for a wiring harness, which is included with the flight controller. You're going to need to use it in order to hook up your video in and your video out, so your video out to your VTX and your video into your camera. But what I thought was cool about it is that it has another 10 volt and ground. There's already a 10 volt and ground right there, and right there on the flight controller. So now you get an extra one, which means you can, I always like to dedicate my VTX to like a, either if I'm running an all-in-one ESC, I'll put a like a 12 volt converter. I don't like running directly from the battery, so 10 volts a good output. So to have that a spare 10 volt is awesome, because then you could hook up another component that's going to require more than 5 volts, which would in theory free up a 5 volt, another 5 volts and a ground, which is really cool. And then also your UART6 comes off of this same wiring harness, and I actually for this Infinity DVR I essentially hooked everything up to this harness. So the video out, the 10 volt and the ground, and then the UART6 on the TX side, I use that for my smart audio. So as you can see here, it's a very clean build. Obviously some of the wires I got to tuck. The cap, the capacitor, I could probably put in a better spot. But because of the frame that I'm using, I did have to rotate the flight controller and the all-in-one ESC in Betaflight. I had to rotate it 90 degrees, and then I had to remap the motors through Betaflight as well in order to make it fit like this. It's normally going to have the XT60 coming out the back, like pretty much as standard. But if you can see on this frame that I'm using, these 2 nuts there, they would prevent for a nice clean XT60 connection unless I raised it up, and then that would mess up the overall height profile of the quad. So I'm gonna go ahead now, get out to the field, test out this DVR, but more importantly test out this flight controller and ESC combo. I'm gonna be running on 6S as we mentioned, or as I mentioned before, so go ahead and get out to the field and I will be back with some flight footage. Okay, so I've taken the quad out to the field, got a quick test flight in. Very happy with the results. We'll go over the flight controller and ESC combo first. Very, very, very smooth power. That's the best way I can describe this Hobbywing X-Rotor Micro combo. Like I said, I was running 6S on it. I don't think I went above 28 amps even on a full burst. And this flight controller is capable of 45, so it's pretty much, or the ESC is capable of 45 amps, so it's gonna take pretty much what you throw at it. A little disappointed in the fact that once I put it on 3.5, Betaflight 3.5, my CPU load was affected so much to the point where I couldn't really run the rates or the sample rates that I usually like on the gyro and the PID loop. But 16 on the gyro and 8 on the PID is, it's pretty good. The D-Shot 1200, it's pretty much a must for me. I don't fly any quads that don't have that, the BL Heli 32. So between the two, you really can't go wrong with this. It's $100 for a 45 amp all-in-one ESC. Those usually run 50, 60 bucks alone, if not more. And then you know, a nice new F4 flight controller like this, anywhere from 30 to 50 bucks as well. So for $100 and to make such a nice, clean, light setup, it's a definite must buy, especially if you're looking to go the ultralight route, whether it be 4S, 5S, 6S, this thing's gonna handle it. So yeah, overall rating, I would give a 4 of 5. I'll give it a 5 of 5. I guess it's not really their fault. I guess it's more Betaflight's fault in the sense that the CPU load going up. But 4 or 5. I've flown better flight controllers. I've flown better all-in-one ESCs, but for $100, this is a really, really good deal. And now on to the Infinity DVR VTX by AKK. I'll go ahead and I'll do this the right way. So as you can see by the footage, the quality of the DVR, once again, it is analog, but it was a good steady feed. The audio quality is horrendous, but that's expected from an integrated mic like that. You can honestly cover up the mic and it'll at least cut down the wind noise. You'll still hear the motors, but that awful wind noise you won't hear as much. As far as the quality through my goggles, I had no breakups. I didn't take it any far distances or anything like that, but it gave me no indications that it was going to break up on me. I went behind a couple buildings, I dropped down behind me and whatnot, so tested it out to see if I would get some breakups. So the fact that that didn't happen, definitely an A in my book. I don't even have it at 1,000 milliwatts right now either. I have it set at 800 milliwatts, just because there's no sense for me to use 1,000 milliwatts if I'm just going to be within a half-mile range. Once I take it out and go mountain flying and stuff like that, I'll go ahead and set it up to 1,000 milliwatts and see what it does. So overall, I really do like the VTX. The only issue I had with it was, like I said, the interface with changing the channels and the bands. It's just really wonky. You know, the memorizing what channel, the this and the that. So the fact that it has smart audio alleviates all that. But for all you guys manually changing the channels, you're gonna think this thing's a pain. So for that reason and that reason alone, I give this a 3.5 out of 5. Only reason for the 3.5, not the only reason, but the other reason for the minor setback was just the video quality. I know that's more on the camera, but I've run this same setup on a Tramp HV, or even in AKK's other 800 milliwatt VTX, and I just felt like it was a little bit better quality on the video. So that has to do with probably some of the filtration, which I'm assuming they took a little bit of the filtering out of this VTX in order to make way for the components that have to do with the DVR. That's my guess. I'm not sure about that. But overall, for $28 or $27.99, this is another definite pickup. Great to have in your collection, and highly competitive price compared to other VTXs on the market for what this thing is offering. So you can pick it up on Amazon. I have a link to it in the feed or in the video description. So check it out. Thanks for watching, and talk to you soon.